Good morning, people of God.
Good morning.
Welcome to what's going to be our last session. I've decided to make it our last session because I could drag this out, but it would begin to be repetitive. So I think it's best that we have our 8 sessions and we've covered a variety of psalms and looked at them in a variety of ways. And then you have a couple of weeks off, and if you're wanting to take Mary Jane's class on Mary, that you've got a little bit of rest. I'm thinking about that I would like to do something after the new year, and actually Peter D'Angio is thinking of doing something as well. So we've got a lot of possibilities, and I'll talk about 2 of those possibilities a little bit later. But for now, let's open with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious God, for the gift of being together, for the gift of learning, for the challenge of learning, we are grateful. We ask that you open our hearts to what we have to learn and gain today, that we might be changed and drawn more closely to you. We offer this prayer in the name and for the sake of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Okay. In certain of the Psalms, it's possible to see a combination of the poetry, the poetic words, and at the same time, ritual action. Sometimes what you see is the alternation of 2 groups of speakers, perhaps between the officiant and the congregation, or sometimes what you'll see in the Psalms is a change from a summons or an imperative, a command, and the actual compliance to that summons or command. In other places, you'll be reading about prostrations or processional shouts, or walking around the altar, or entering the sanctuary, or there are ceremonies of blessing or offering or sacrifice. All of those ritual actions and words are in different psalms. And we're going to look at one particular liturgical psalm. But before we do that, I thought we might talk a little bit about our how we respond to liturgy. I've got this sort of opening question, and I don't have a lot of. That's a great book.
It is.
It's a great book. He's a great scholar. I don't have a lot of discussion questions today because I want to be sure to get through this and have a little bit of time to do one other thing before we close, okay? So the question is this, talking about liturgy. What do you do to prepare yourself for worship? Do you have any particular habits or practices to get ready? And where did you learn those practices? I mean, maybe your answer is, nah, I just roll out of bed and hope I'm going to get to church on time. Or, maybe there's something else that you do. So take a couple of minutes and talk about that in your small groups.
I like to yield to prayer.
I don't prepare bad.
Well, I try to. I realize And what says, seal.
Well, you know,
Another minute or so. 1 minute or so. Okay. Let's. Does anybody want to talk about or share your preparation and what you do? Ken.
Yeah, I'll start. I like to, when I come into service, I like to kneel to pray before the service, which frustrates me when some of the kneelers in the church aren't working, which I brought up with the vestry, but we decided that nothing's going to happen until we really do the redo of the sanctuary.
Oh, okay.
So it also bothers me if people want to engage me in conversation right away before I'm ready. But I try to sit down, kneel if possible, otherwise sit down and pray before anyone can get to me.
When you kind of bow down like this and you're sitting and your head is on the kneeling bench in front of you, I believe that's called the Episcopal squat. So when you see Ken doing that, it doesn't mean that he's gotten dizzy. He's doing the Episcopal squat.
which usually has something to do with the hangover.
David?
Saying this is my pew.
I frankly see every day as worship day.
Ah.
And I start out.
Paula, we've got 2 chairs, one here and one there.
Oh, okay.
3, one in the corner. Go ahead.
I see every day as a worship day. I start out with the Irish Jesuit prayer book.
Ah.
And
Fire.
there's a gospel passage, and then there are a couple of questions for contemplation. So I read that, think about it, and then I write my prayer for the day. And I've been doing that for 13 years.
Wow.
And, well, that's it. Every day is a worship day.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I particularly like the idea of writing your own prayer for the day. You know, that helps center.
I learned that from a silent retreat, Ignatian retreat that I was on many years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, Ignatian retreat is very intense. Anybody else? Carrie.
I'm not sure what Elena said. I have my own little thing, but she says that she listens to, through the pandemic, she began listening to Mass, right? I don't want to misrepresent you. Yeah, and a short Mass, but she just does that while she's getting ready and getting things done. She listens to that, and it focuses her heart. And often we're really busy trying to get ready, and so I thought that was really, especially for those of us who have families and things like that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Doug?
I do choir practice before church.
Yep.
And through the week, I listen to Diane Bish play a hymn.
Oh, yeah. She does a good job. Yeah.
I have a prayer Spotify playlist that I listen to while I walk here. And I kind of like the fact that I'm ready before Jennifer and I have choir practice, so I come about 15 minutes before her. So as I walk here, I'm listening to that and I'm by myself.
Ah, very nice. You know, this is one of the things that these liturgical psalms are all about. They're about not only about the worship per se of the temple, but about the preparation for that event. And probably the best known one is Psalm 24, which is on page 613 in your prayer book.
What?
613. Maybe we might do what we've done before and have the women read the odd-numbered verses and the men read the even-numbered verses.
Two sexes.
The earth,
Go ahead,
the earth is
ladies.
the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and all who dwell therein.
For it is he who founded it upon the seas and made it firm upon the rivers of the deep.
Who can stand in the heel of the Lord, and who can stand in his holy place?
Those who have clean hands and a pure heart, who have not pledged themselves to falsehood, nor sworn by what is a fraud.
They shall receive a blessing from the Lord, and a just reward from the God of their salvation.
Such is the generation of those who seek him, of those who seek your face, O God of Jacob.
Lift up your heads, O gates, lift them high, O everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in.
Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle.
Lift up your heads, O gates, lift them high, O everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in.
Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory. Okay, I think this is probably somewhat familiar, right? What's that?
Too hot to handle. There's a handle inside.
Ah, yes. This whole psalm depicts and accompanies the processional entry of the ark into the temple. And there are two exchanges between the pilgrims and the priests. Here's how the psalm begins. David, would you read that for us?
Oh, the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. For he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers.
This is a psalm of praise in sort of general terms, but and it's a praise of the majesty of the Creator and the Lord of creation. These two verses may be a kind of extract from an earlier psalm of praise, but here it takes the place of the entire psalm of praise and becomes a sort of entry unit or an introduction to the psalm, and gives the psalm, because it's talking about the world, all of the seas, it gives the psalm a sort of universal importance. So this God who enters the Jerusalem temple is not a local deity, as would have been the case in the surrounding ancient cultures. This God who enters the Jerusalem temple is the Lord of the whole universe. God in creation establishes the world. Remember this from Genesis by subduing the threatening power of the sea and setting a firm limit between land and sea. This theme comes back continually in the Old Testament, and particularly in the Psalms, that when God created the world, the first thing God did was set aside the chaos. It was like the chaos of the roiling seas, and God separated land from sea. Very important theme in the Old Testament and in the Psalms. As I say, this kind of belief was unique in Israel. In the surrounding cultures, not only were there many gods with perhaps one high god above all the others, but this high god was basically still a local deity. And every culture had not only its own pantheon of gods, it had its own high god. Israel, in coming to believe there is only one God, Israel was unique. I mean, we're used to monotheism because it's all around us. We're not the only ones who are monotheists. The Jews are monotheists and Muslims are monotheists, but that concept was a relatively recent development. Okay? When the Spanish came to this part of the world, what did they encounter? They encountered a pantheon of deities, right? All right, let's take a look at where this psalm goes. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? Those who have clean hands and a pure heart, who do not lift up their souls to what is false and do not swear deceitfully. They will receive blessing from the Lord and vindication from the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. After we finish verse 2 of Psalm 24, the rest of the psalm is a series of questions and responses. I think it's so interesting here. The question is, who can ascend the hill of the Lord? Who can be in the Lord's presence? Those who have clean hands and pure hearts, who do not give their souls to what is false, do not swear deceitfully. There are no rites for cleansing the ritually impure or those who have violated a taboo. Entry into the temple was open to the one who had clean hands and a pure heart. The sole concern here is for the individual's inner disposition and the individual's behavior towards others. This clear, oh, my papers are out of order, sorry. This clearly shows the influence of the prophets. The prophets' concern, if you read them, particularly Amos, but the other 8th century prophets, their concern was about behavior towards others, especially the needy and the vulnerable. In other cultures, not so important. What was important was you went through the ritual cleansing, that you did that rite before you came into the holy place to worship. In First Temple Judaism, that wasn't so important. The temple was open to those who seek the Lord and seek the Lord's faith. There's no religious or ethical quality here, but trust which turns to God and trust which is ready to do God's will. Those people who trust in God and are ready to do God's will are assured of blessing in daily life for family and work. They're assured of God's help when they approach God in necessity. Many years ago when I was in Africa, actually maybe you've seen the African chasuble. I wear the green one that has the gold trim on it. I had that made in a market in It was in Accra in Ghana. I had this made. And the tailor who made it for me was Muslim. So he had no idea what I was asking him to make. You don't want any sleeves on this thing? No, you just want like this open thing with your, yeah, that's what, anyway, he did a wonderful job once I explained to him what I wanted. But my point is, he evidently was a leader of the Muslim community. And in the back room, he had a place where people came and did their 5 times daily prayer. That is part of the discipline of observant Muslims. But what they did before they went back there, they had to wash their hands and their face and their feet. And then they could go back there and be on the prayer rug, kneeling and saying the prayers. We don't have a ritual like that, but that sort of ancient, association of physical cleanliness with readiness to meet God is typical in many religions and was particularly typical in the ancient religions of those communities that surrounded Israel. I mean, I hope you're washing your face and your hands before you come to church, but we're not, we're not checking. The one time that I went into a mosque, I had to take my feet off. Again, take my shoes off my feet. Okay, and that's part of the being prepared to do that. Anyway, okay, let's go on to, John.
I'm feeling the 10 Commandments in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're going to do something different here, and we'll split ourselves into 2 groups. And the first group can start and read what's printed in white, and then we're going to answer with what's printed in yellow.
Lift up your heads, O gates,
And be
Lift up, O ancient doors,
that the King of
glory may come in.
Who is
the King of glory.
The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle.
Lift up your heads, O gates.
Lift it up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in.
Who is the King of glory?
The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory. So here again, we've got more questions and responses, but this time the questions are not directed to moral fitness of the worshipers, but to the identity of the king who's entering the gate. You can imagine, and I showed you the procession of pilgrims ascending the Temple Mount. I showed you that in another week. And the chorus is chanting these questions, eventually reaching the temple, and the last verses demonstrate how this is an ordinary event, coming through the gates into the city. That's an ordinary event. It's an everyday happening, but it turns into this liturgical rite. Many cities in the ancient and medieval world were enclosed within walls or gates. This is a view of the gates or the walls surrounding the old city of Jerusalem. Maybe some of you have seen these in person. But what used to happen, and you can see, you can't just come in anywhere. You have to find the entrance. You have to come in the gate. And here is what typically happened. Somebody came to the gate and said, "Let me in. Please let me in." There's a request for entry. And then there's a question from inside. "Well, who are you to be asking for entry?" And the person outside answers and offers his name, usually his. If there was a woman, she probably almost certainly wouldn't be traveling alone. And then the person guarding the gates would open the gates or dismiss them and say, "Sorry, we're not letting you in." Okay? This mundane procedure is made into a ritual by being transferred to the occasion of the arrival of a procession. In this case, the arrival of the procession carrying the ark. Evidently, they took the ark out of the temple, walked it around the city, or walked it outside of the city even, and then walked back in. And this is what Psalm 24 is showing us. Note that the gates themselves are summoned. They're talking to the gates, and this is the kind of gate that is being referred to. This is a gate that goes up. It's not a gate that opens out or opens in. It's a gate that goes up. Lift up your heads indicates this kind of gate. Technically, it's called a portcullis, if you're interested in that little bit of trivia. But in this case, the pilgrim party announces the arrival of a king seeking admittance. In this case, the Ark of the Covenant was carried in procession from its place in the temple and brought back the same way. This ancient ritual had its beginnings in Mesopotamia and continues today. Where? And here in San Miguel, this is a picture of a religious procession in San Miguel. It's the same kind of thing, walking this sacred object which represents Christ to them. In the same way the ark carried in procession would have represented God to the ancient Israelite people. So here, the ark was viewed as God's throne, though it was an empty throne, so that the entry ritual was employed to glorify Israel's king. Israel's king being God. And in this psalm, a simple question and answer becomes a chant of praise, followed by an answer about God's majesty and might. Okay. So, what happened when the temple was destroyed and the ark disappeared? The psalm itself survived as a psalm of praise from the worshiping congregation. In later Jewish tradition, Psalm 24 was sung when the Torah scroll is about to be returned to the ark and carried around the congregation. If you've ever been to synagogue worship on a Sabbath, what is the key event in that? Anybody been to synagogue worship on a Sabbath?
Passing the Torah?
Yeah, they take the Torah out of the ark and process it around the congregation. And this is sung as part of that ritual. Okay? So instead of the Ark of the Covenant being the representative of God, the words that God spoke become representative of God. I have to think, it makes me think, that what we do on Sunday mornings in a gospel procession is a sort of a variation of that. We honor the gospel. We honor the words of Jesus with this special ceremony. And then we don't put it back inside an ark. We put that book back on the altar. It has its own sacred place. So I think there's some connection here between all of these. Any comments or questions? We're going to move on to another psalm. I've got 3 that I want to do today, and we've used a half hour, so I think I'm right on time. Any final comments or observations?
Besides Latin countries, I know that we have processions in Italy, Spain, Mexico, these type of processions with sacred, either images of virgins or the cross or stuff. Where else do they have? They still have it in Israel, or is there any type of procession?
Well, I think, as I was saying, a variation of this, or what grew out of this religious procession, is the procession of the Torah around the congregation in Sabbath worship. And our own variation of that, in a very limited way, is the gospel procession. So, religious processions, processing a sacred object, I don't know enough about other religious cultures to answer that. I don't believe that there's such a thing in Islam, but there may be in Hinduism. Does anybody know about that? I can't answer the question because I don't know. But that's the way this evolved from a simple act of asking admittance to the city has come to be what we recognize on Sunday as the gospel procession. Variation of that. Okay. Certain psalms have the theme of the preservation of the holy city in the face of enemy attack. Zion, which refers to the city of Jerusalem and its holy temple, Zion is the mountain of God. Sometimes these songs of Zion or psalms of Zion are called national psalms. They may possibly be a psalm of thanksgiving after victory over an enemy. Let's look at Psalm 46 on page 649. Page 649. Okay, and let's read this by whole verse, and let's have this side start with the odd-numbered verses, and this side respond with even-numbered verses. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
Therefore, we will not fear the earth, and the mountains top into the depths of the sea.
Though its waters rage and foam, and though the mountains tremble at its tumult,
The Lord is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold.
there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High.
God
is
is
in
in
this
this
earth.
earth. She
She
shall
shall
not be
not
overthrown.
be overthrown.
God
God
will
shall
help her
help
at
her
great
at the
name.
break of day.
The nations make much ado, and the kingdoms are shaken. God has spoken, and the earth shall melt away.
The Lord of hosts is
with
with us.
The
The
God
God
of
of
Jacob
Jacob
is
is
our
our
stronghold.
stronghold.
Come now and look upon the works of the Lord, what awesome things he has done on earth.
It is he who makes war to cease in all the world. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear, and burns the shields of fire.
Be still then and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us.
The God of Jacob is our stronghold.
There is a theme of confidence in this Psalm of Zion. Here, the whole nation has a certain confidence, and this confidence has been developed into a psalm. Note, there's a kind of a refrain here. Verse 4, verse 8, and verse 12 are identical. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. So this refrain divides the psalm into three parts. The consequence of the repulse of the nation's assault is that God puts an end to wars, and the nations are called upon to acknowledge this God as Lord. Okay, here is the avowal of trust. Here's the grounds for the trust. Carrie, can you read these verses for us, please?
Yes. God is our refuge
very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be moved, and though the mountains be toppled into the depths of the sea, though its waters rage and foam, and though the mountains tremble at its tumult.
Okay. Who can tell me what are the most common words when a messenger from God, that is to say, an angel, appears to a mortal? What are the first words that are said?
Do not be afraid.
Do not be afraid. Yeah, it's a huge theme in the scriptures. And here, we will not fear. We're not going to be afraid. The we is the congregation assembled in Jerusalem for worship. Because God has proven to be reliable in the nation's history, God can be relied upon for whatever they need in the present and in the future. This is a really interesting bit of trivia.
Oh, interesting.
Martin Luther's great hymn, A Mighty Fortress, was inspired by this hymn. There are some, a mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And then you've got the image of the flood and mortal ills in verse 3. You've got the waters raging and so on. It was inspired. Now, Martin Luther translated the Bible into German and then took that translation and wrote a hymn based on that psalm. It's not quite exactly recognizable to us as exactly the same, but I was going to say, what was I going to say again? I've lost. My pages are out of order. Sorry. Okay, the difference in Luther's version is this fighting tone. Okay, the psalm itself closes with a note of quiet trust. A mighty fortress is our God is much more stern and has much more of a tone of fighting. That's the way Luther wrote it. But I think it's very interesting to see again how the Psalms have inspired certain aspects of our Christian culture without our knowing it. Okay. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be moved, and though the mountains be toppled into the depths of the sea, though its waters rage and foam, and though the mountains tremble at its tumult. The people's trust in God will hold firm even in the face of catastrophe. Note again the idea of the primeval waters of chaos, which the Creator has tamed. Huge theme in the Old Testament. Water equals chaos. Okay, raging and foaming. That's scary stuff. They didn't give swimming lessons in ancient Israel. You know, it was something to be feared, something to be tamed. This image of the mountain breaking apart is thought by some scholars to refer to a literal earthquake. Maybe so. But also, maybe it's metaphorical. Maybe it refers to an assault on the city by enemies. But the idea in either case is, even though chaos should break upon us, we will not fear. And then again, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. These are actually two parallel terms. The Lord of hosts, the God of majesty, the God of might, the God of power, is the same God who called Jacob. What was Jacob's other name?
Israel.
Yeah. Okay. Is the God of Israel. So this God has proven throughout the nation's history to be a refuge. This line about that we're going to come up on, the nations make much ado, the people, despite that, continue confident, despite the threat of assault by the nations on the city of God. Okay, Jeff, can you read this for us?
Mm-hmm. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be overthrown. God shall help her at the break of day. The nations make much ado, and the kingdoms are shaken. God has spoken, and the earth shall melt away.
In this psalm, it's as if you're looking at two lights, and those lights are lined up, and you can't tell whether the light is coming from the present or the future. We've got a vision of the city. Is it the vision of the city in the present, or the vision of the city at the end of time? They're both kind of intertwined here. But this is an idealized vision of, and I put it in yellow to highlight it, the city of God. Okay, there's a river whose streams make glad this city of God, which is Jerusalem. There's no river in the city of Jerusalem. There's no river there. So what's going on here? There is a sort of intermittent spring that seasonally has water in it, but that spring and the river that it generates is mostly underground, and it doesn't circle the city. It goes from one place to another. So that part of it seems to be a vision of the end times when this river encircles Jerusalem. Jerusalem, as the city consecrated to be God's dwelling place, will not be moved because God is in the midst of Jerusalem. She shall not be overthrown. The city will not collapse. I don't want to get into a political discussion here, but I think it's evident where the commitment to the city of Jerusalem on the part of observant Jews, where it comes from. It's a huge theme in the Old Testament, and particularly in these Psalms of Zion. And when you've heard that your whole life, it becomes part of your identity, your religious and your personal identity. And talking about, sharing the city with folks who are not of your culture or your religion becomes very distressing, even threatening. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing or that, I'm in favor of that, but one can see with empathy where this comes from and why it's so important. Okay. God will help her at the break of day. Interesting that the city is seen as a woman here. And yet there's, in contrast to that, there's all this imagery of battle and strength. To me, that is a contrast with the feminine imagery or the feminine language that's used here. But God will help her at the break of day. Why the break of day? Well, if there's an assault on the city or an attack on the city, when is that going to happen? At dawn, of course. Okay? And this bit about the earth melting away is a vision, again, of the end times. The assault of the nations on the city of God at the end of time will be a cosmic scale, an attack which could drag creation down into chaos again. And God speaking in the midst of this chaos, that's meant to bring confidence and assurance. The earth is melting away, the kingdoms are shaken, but God has spoken. God has promised. Ooh, what did I do there? Don't want that. And again, we have this refrain. Let's read it together. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Here we've got a couple more verses. Ken, would you read this for us?
Come now and look upon the works of the Lord, what awesome things he has done on earth. It is he who makes war to cease in all the world. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear, breaks the bow and shatters the spear, and burns the shields with fire. Be still then, and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
So over against this chaos and this melting of the cities and all of that, the psalm sets peaceful trust in Israel's God, who's made the world and holds the world in his hands. This summons, this imperative, the command to come and look, is addressed to the same group of people that are getting the command, be still. In other words, the come and look doesn't make more aggression. If we come and look, it will make us still. I started out by talking about how this is a hymn of confidence. If you know someone who has that sort of confident personality, are they someone who's aggressive and hollering all the time? Someone who's confident is quiet and still. Don't you think?
Yes.
And this is what God is calling God's people to be. Not so much aggressive. And really, in this psalm, the imagery isn't God's people attacking God's enemies. It's God triumphing over those enemies. And what does that triumph look like? Well, all of those weapons are going to be destroyed. Here's the train of thought in this psalm. There's some sort of apocalyptic warfare, that is to say, some sort of warfare at the end of time. And in that war, God breaks up the assault of the raging people against God's city. It's not the people who are doing the assaulting. It's God fighting on the people's behalf. And that assault that God is responsible for ushers in an era of peace when the nations finally cease waging war. And this particular peace extends to the whole world. It's a lovely image, isn't it? Even though this peace is in the future, the certainty of its coming gives the congregation confidence in the here and now. there is concern with the inviolability of God's city, but also a concern for human destiny. God will finally bring an end to war. Isn't that our hope even today? Especially today. Thank you, Alex. And, okay. So that's a Psalm of Zion. And we're still doing fine on time. So let me see. Any thoughts about this psalm? Does it bring up anything in you? Any questions? Any comments? Carrie?
Well, I think that the linguist part of me really is fascinated with the verb use in the song, because there's so much of the past, progressive, the present, and the future, and that interplay, the way human beings grapple with time, there's a lot of overlap. And also that the relationship between the physicality versus the spiritual, there's a physical truth for every spiritual truth. There's a spiritual truth for every physical truth.
Yes.
And so like that interplay of time and of the physicality of it is really deep. I mean, you could really take this somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very cogent observation. Other thoughts or questions?
One minor, in the slide you had before, there's the use of the phrase on earth and in earth. And I'm just curious as to what the phrases meant, what the differences were back then when these were written.
Yeah. I'm not sure that Hebrew has the equivalent of our prepositions. So this is a translator's guess about how to phrase it, and what is the difference between what he's done on earth and be exalted in the earth. How does that strike you, that difference?
I guess on the earth may be the
In
human life.
Spanish is very interesting because it says basically that he has stopped the war in all regions of the earth. Talking about the whole thing, that he will be exalted in the earth. One is talking about how the war has gone through all the confines of earth, and the other one said, once in the earth, I will be exalted.
So do they
It's a little bit different.
Which prepositions do they use?
So it's very different.
Well, and this goes to what you were saying earlier, Carrie. That sentence, the awesome things he has done on earth. Okay, that's a present perfect. And the last line is future. And there's the interaction and the intertwining of all of these time elements. So it may have something to do with that. It's a fascinating psalm. Okay, now, how am I going to conclude 8 weeks of study in the Psalms? That was what I was asking myself. And I thought I would begin with a review of the structure of Psalms of Lament. We're not going to go back to Psalms of Lament, but I think it will help us to have this review. What are the elements of a Psalm of Lament? There's an invocation, beginning by addressing God, sometimes with praise, and calling on God to listen. Listen, God, I'm in trouble, or we're in trouble. So there's an invocation. And then there's a complaint. The psalmist describes the suffering or distress that enemies are causing, the pain that is being caused. And then there's a petition. The psalmist asks God for help, for deliverance. The psalmist asks God to intervene. And then there's an expression of confidence, a concluding statement of trust in God, even in the midst of suffering. And oftentimes, there is a vow. The psalmist promises to praise God once this deliverance is received. Now, the order of these can vary, and not every psalm of lament will contain all of these elements. There is usually a shift in tone from distress and questioning to assurance and hope. That's what happens in a lament, a psalm of lament. But sometimes the psalm only contains this expression of confidence, the fourth element. What happens when this expression of confidence and trust is expanded into a psalm of 6 verses? Let's take a look in the prayer book at page 612 to see what happens when this is expanded into 6 verses. Are we ready to read this together in unison? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul and guides me along right pathways for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely your goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Before we go on, I've got a discussion question, which is this. Does this psalm have any special meaning for you? Is there some event or service, some memory that you associate it with? Share with your small group.
So much, I think. I kept
My memory is back there. So
You had to recite it.
yes, it was during this comprehensive we memorized it.
Of course.
I kept wanting to go King James
Yes,
Version.
I come from those and my enemies instead of the other terminology. But yes, I remember that classroom, what it looked like, what Mrs. Humphrey looked like. I still have the little prayer book that they gave each of us that they signed. Still have it. And then of course we read it.
I was president, and I was my rod and my staff, they comforted me.
That's typical.
Yes.
I had an experience with that. I was in an MRI tube, you know, I was contemplating thing like this.
Yes.
And then suddenly that song came in my mind, the first song.
Back in, when I went to grade school, back in the dark ages, we could read the Bible in school. And Mrs. Brown, in 5th grade, taught us this one.
Pero me llamó mucho la atención.
Says is very good. And
leader, after which we can send the pledge of allegiance. I don't think there's any of that.
To me, it's just a song that I've heard yeah.
Okay. Who would like to share something about, I'm going to call on Andrea because I think she has a great memory, and then I'm going to call on David and others who want to share.
So my first recollection of Psalm 23 is, it was aside from the Lord's Prayer, it was the first psalm we had to memorize in the 3rd grade. It was Mr. and Mrs. Humphrey's 3rd grade Sunday school class. I still have a little prayer book that they gave us at the end of that year when they signed it. But it was very special. We had to learn to memorize it and recite it in front of the whole class, and then you got a gold star on the wall when you did.
Well, okay. David, you had a lovely story.
I was in an MRI tube, where it's like being in a casket, and I was about to panic when suddenly that psalm came to my mind, and I repeated it in my mind, and it began to relax me.
Any other thoughts or memories about this psalm? Jackie?
I worked in a very sexist engineering corporation, and I had a meeting with the CEO, and I was like petrified, and I kind of recited this in my head.
Yeah. And that brought you some calm.
It did, it brought me some calm.
Great story.
We were saying this is often recited at funerals, but when else is it recited in the church?
There are a number of times that it comes up in the Sunday lectionary. The 4th Sunday after Easter, at least once every 3 years it's recited, and then there are other times. But in terms of liturgy, it's most often used at funerals. I've done 2 funerals in the last couple of weeks, and I believe we used it at both funerals because the family asked for it. And we also did it in the King James Version. It's the only thing in the prayer book that's in the language of the King James Bible is the 23rd Psalm within the burial service.
Yeah.
Carmen?
Well, to me, this psalm has been probably the first one that I paid attention when I was a child. And it is because it really brings you all these images of, he leads me in green pastures. And then even I pass the valley of death, or I will have no fears. All that really, as a child, when you are reading it, comes to you. It to me has been always a very fresh, full of images psalm.
I'm going to talk about those images because it's very interesting that this comparison of a king or a god with a shepherd is one of the most ancient metaphors in the Near East. From the time of the Sumerian civilization, which was at least 5,000 years ago, until, for thousands of years, that image was used. Here is an excerpt from one of those ancient civilizations. The king of the city that flourishes like a cow, a good shepherd thou art. O shepherd, thou knowest how to protect man. Ewe and lamb seeking nourishment, come for it to thee. How to lead goat and kid with thy staff, for all time thou knowest. Here's an ancient poem from ancient Mesopotamian civilization that uses the same imagery. At the time when it emerged, it probably emerged from nomadic groups. And the very existence of those nomadic, that is to say, wandering groups, depended on the leader just as the flock depended on the shepherd. The Sumerian culture was one of the first cultures that emerged from nomadic tribalism to building cities in about 4500 BCE. And then the image was transformed from the leader, who was the head shepherd, to the leader, the idea that the leader was related to the, or this image was transferred, and the idea came to be the individual's relationship with God. So both usages persist in the Old Testament. God is a shepherd to the people of Israel. That occurs in Psalm 80 and Isaiah 63, for example, but several other places. God is also the protector of the individual. God, the protector of the nation, the guide of the nation, God, the protector and guider of the individual. Both of those images are in the Old Testament. The change from the group to the individual identifies this as a later composition. Jackie asked me earlier, what was this maybe written by David? And this is one of those where in Hebrew the superscription is le David. And I talked earlier about how that might mean it's a psalm about David, a psalm inspired by David, possibly written by David, although that's less, most scholars say that's less probable, that it's about or inspired by David and his life. So why is Psalm 23 so immensely popular? Another bit of trivia. Probably owing to the prominent 19th century preacher Henry Ward Beecher, who described Psalm 23 as the nightingale of psalms in one of his memoirs. There's a biography about Henry Ward Beecher, and he was so prominent, so well known. I mean, back in those days, preaching was practically like entertainment. And you're not sitting down for like 15 minutes listening to Father Frank humor on. You were, those people got up into the pulpit, and you were in for at least an hour, okay? I mean, it was a whole different thing, but the point is, he was wildly popular and hugely influential. There's a biography of him. It's really fascinating. It's called The Most Famous Man in the World, which he claimed to be at one point. Somewhat later, Louisa May Alcott alluded to Psalm 23 in her novel Little Women, in which chapter 40 is entitled The Valley of the Shadow. So, lots of references to this in popular culture. And I was looking for hymns based on Psalm 23. There are at least 200 hymns based on Psalm 23. We've got 2 of them in our prayer book. I mean, you may remember The King of Love My Shepherd Is, which we sing on occasion. And then there's the My Shepherd Will Supply My Need, both of which we've sung here, within the last couple of months. Okay. I'll ask, who would like to read the beginning of Psalm 23? Paula?
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. I can't see through you, Frank. Sorry. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake.
Okay. These 3 verses develop the metaphor of God as shepherd. The idea could have been expressed in a single sentence, in God I trust. But the psalmist lingers over this comparison and develops it. What the shepherd means for the flock, God means to me. And here, 2 functions of the shepherd are developed. He leads the flock He provides water and pasturage for the flock. I talked about that structure of the Psalm of Lament because behind this psalm lies the structure of an individual lament, as the speaker, in the face of his distress and anguish, professes his trust in God's help. So by expansion, the psalmist seeks to highlight this profession, to reinforce and to emphasize it. And in doing this, the psalmist strengthens his own confidence and certainty and that of others. I shall not want. The psalm is divided basically into three parts. And verse 4 is the central idea. Doug, can you read it for us, please?
Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
You were almost going to say the words from the King James Version, which is in all of our heads, because that's what we hear. And if we do Psalm 23 at a funeral, I always have us read the King James Version, because somebody will read those words and think, oh yeah, I remember this. Even somebody who the last time they were in church was third grade Sunday school, and now they're in their eighth decade, they'll still remember that, okay? God is with the speaker, and God is protecting the speaker. The background of the Psalm of Lament emerges more clearly in this central verse. The reference to the dark valley, the reference to evil. So Psalm 23 is not just this lovely, sweet little thing. The psalmist is in danger. There's a dark valley. There's a place of evil. But despite that, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. And this, about the rod and the staff, I was reading. One scholar says there are other ways of translating those words, different ways of speaking about the shepherd's crook. One scholar suggests that instead of your rod and your staff, it might be translated your club and support. I think that puts an interesting spin on things, because the rod isn't just a walking stick. What does the shepherd do with that rod? That's a big, long piece of heavy wood. And if there's a danger to the sheep, that shepherd is going to use it to try to get a wolf or something away from the flock. Okay? And that crook, well, if a little lamb has gotten lost, that crook will be used to bring that errant creature back into the flock. Okay? All right. What's the reason for the psalmist's confidence? The psalmist's confidence is due to God's promise to be with. Okay? I want us to take a look at this excerpt from Psalm, it's not from the Psalms, it is from, I've got an extra copy here, it is from Genesis chapter 26, beginning at verse 3. Who can read this for us? Doug, go ahead.
Now there was famine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar to King Abimelech of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Settle in the land that I shall show you. Reside in this land as an alien, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and to your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will fulfill the oath that I swore to your father Abraham."
This promise, I will be with you, is repeated and renewed numerous times in the Bible.
Father, where is this again? Genesis?
Chapter 26, beginning at verse 3. This verse, I will be with you, is often preceded with, do not fear. These same words, I will be with you, are in Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1 Kings, and Isaiah. Over and over. Yes, we've got these Psalms that talk about the majesty of God and the power of God, the creator of the universe and the ruler of creation. But here there's something intimate, there's something close, there's something personal. I will be with you. There's a promise to hold on to when you're in a scary situation like going through that, getting into that MRI. Yeah. God is with us. God is with me and with you. Jackie, can you read this verse for us?
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows.
So here the metaphor changes. We're not talking about a shepherd anymore. We're talking about a host. The poem changes to direct speech. Instead of he, it's you. The protection of verse 4 is linked to this provision. The celebration of a feast without any hindrance from my foes. So sure is the psalmist of God's support that he's guaranteed a joyful feast in spite of all that besets him. In the presence of mine enemies, again reveals the background to this is a psalm of lament. It's just missing all the other stuff other than the expression of confidence. And then it closes with this verse. Alex, can you read it for us?
Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long.
This psalm closes with a note of certainty, which is different than optimism. The speaker knows that he must still and perhaps often walk through a dark valley. But the speaker knows that no danger can separate him from God. No danger can separate him from God. There is a continual fellowship, a continual relationship with this God. As I said earlier, Psalm 23 is probably the best known of the Psalms, and it's often viewed as this sort of cheerful and idyllic picture of an idealized relationship with God. I say maybe it wasn't always meant to be seen that way. The next quote from the Bible that I have is a description of the shepherd's work from Genesis chapter 31, starting at verse 38. And these are Jacob's words to Laban. What did he say? Jeff, read these verses for us.
These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. It was like this with me. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times.
The point is this. Psalm 23 is not about a good shepherd and a little lamb. It is to emphasize 2 actions: the provision a shepherd makes for his flock, and the provision God makes for someone who trusts in God. This trust rests on real life experience. Here we have the real life experience of Jacob. Does this make it sound as if the life of a shepherd is sweet and delightful and we're caring for these darling little lambs? Does it sound that way to you? It's a hard life. It's hard work. That's what Jacob is complaining to his father-in-law about. The trust that we have in God in this relationship is based on real life experiences in which suffering and anguish and doubt all play a part. Trust grows in the dark valley. Trust grows in the midst of deadly threats. And so when one trusts in God, whether in the midst of worry about daily bread, or the worry about asking what the right path might be, or the worry of feeling that one is in real danger or peril, trusting that will be upheld, that there is one who takes care of us. In and through that trust, we achieve communion and fellowship with God, and we can rightly say, God is my shepherd. And that gives life a meaning that it might not have had otherwise. I'm stopping there. That's the end of our course on Psalms.